I'm Jon Altschuler.
I'm Scott Bennett. We've known each other for almost 50 years.
We grew up together on the playground.
And now we're in the foreground and still growing up.
From the playground to the foreground.
Join the conversation. Episode 19, back on the playground. Hey, Jon.
Good morning.
Morning. Casual Friday.
Yes.
I don't know that we've, in now almost 20 episodes, we've done a Friday morning. Thought about it today. So I wore jeans thinking, well, first I thought I was going to wear shorts last night to sort of throw one at you because I haven't worn shorts either. You typically wear shorts. And then you come in wearing pants, and now I'm doing Casual Friday. What do you think of Casual Friday? Is there even Casual Friday anymore? Is that thing gone?
It's gone.
Yeah, because we're just casual, right?
Yeah.
So since the last episode, and thanks again, really enjoyed having Matt here. Meant a lot to me to have the guardian of my donor, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you were in Ireland playing golf.
Yes, in Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland, yeah. And we're not going to go too much into it. We could spend a whole episode talking about it because we're both really into golf. But did you ever imagine, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you'd find yourself in those spots? Do you take stock in that?
No.
And how was it?
That was wonderful. I mean, it is funny to think that I never would have expected to be friends with the LPGA commissioner, the USGA president. Just my friends in Dallas have turned into big golf people. Yeah.
And luckily you started playing, right? So you can get invited to those things. Yeah. And I saw I was watching some of the lives that you were in. For those that are interested, you should follow Jon on social media. He did a good job of kind of chronicling as a golf guy who's done it all my life. Obviously, it's a bucket list for me, and we're not doing bucket lists anymore. We're doing things I got to do lists given my life.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed watching it and look forward to hearing more about it. I, though, had an interesting week as well, someplace I thought I would never be. After last episode, we had Matt here, who was the guardian of Cody Richardson, my donor. But this week, from Sunday to Tuesday, I was in Denver at the Association of Organ Procurement Organizations conference.
Wow.
And the reason I was there, I hope in the future I'll be doing a lot of speaking, but I was actually there for my professional career, my day job, I like to call it, insurance. I'm trying to support that industry. And what's interesting to me is it's this, you wouldn't know there are businesses and in organ donation, it is a real tremendous gift, but it's also a huge industry, right? There's all kinds of capital equipment and buildings. And so there's a lot there. But what I want to tell you and what's so fascinating to me was this week, I got to meet the people from Mississippi Organ Recovery Agency. So they were the people that procured the organ. They typically don't meet all that often, somebody that lives in another place or state. So here I was at this conference. I had a badge, ribbons on a badge and said recipient and saw the people. So they gathered with me and took a picture, which I will send to you later. But it was really heartwarming. At the end of the conference, they gathered around me and to share my story with a lot of people there that do the work. Day in and day out, mission-driven people was someplace I thought I would never be.
What, does every state have a recovery group?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. There are 53 federally regulated agencies. Texas actually has 3 because of the size of our state.
Oh.
There's 3 competing. Believe it or not, it's a value driver for a whole ecosystem. That organ, for the hospitals, the doctors, but the organ, it has to be federally regulated. The United States leads the sort of world and the way that we operate. There are people that are trying to disrupt it. So that's kind of interesting so that we can do more organs, and learned a lot. I'm continuing to become very well versed, and I hope over the course of my life to be an advocate in places like that, both speaking and taking care of the people through insurance programs and the like. So
that's cool.
So I'm switching gears. I'm really excited about our guest today. And before we get to that, just curious, do you own a baseball glove still?
I do. I think I have a Nakoma.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
It's like the elite glove.
Oh, okay. You do. You have a Nakoma. Oh, you have a Nakoma. Right. You have it, but you don't know you have it.
Somewhere. I know. I had to go out and buy a glove when my son was growing up. My daughter was playing softball. I was like, I'm getting the best glove.
So I was thinking the same thing, right? Like, our guest has something to do with baseball. We'll talk about our guest in a minute, but I'm very excited. Spends a lot of time thinking about it. But I thought, where's my glove? We've moved, we've downsized. Did it make it to the place? And lo and behold, I knew it was in there. I had a thought. So last night, knowing that we're going to have show and tell with our guest, I went in to retrieve the glove.
Is it a right fielder's glove?
No. Great question. Great question. Not surprising from you. But I went to get the glove and went up into where I thought it was, and it was there. But the state of the glove is what I want to talk about. I mean,
that's not from our youth.
No. My daughter, similarly, I thought about the last time I touched this glove, because look at it. It's the leather is.
That's pleather.
That's pleather,
That's
right?
pleather.
It is definitely not in Nakona, right? It's in
Yeah.
Easton, though. They were before, I think it was like 20 years ago. Sydney played softball, and we were doing a lot of throwing during that time. But I haven't thought about, like, when was the last time I threw a baseball with a glove? What about you? Can you even recall that?
I know. I have a picture on my Instagram doing that.
Yeah.
That was probably 12 years ago.
Yeah. So another thing on our list, I'm going to start making a list of the things I said we'd do. Some we did, like the Stars game. I think we should get some gloves and go out and throw a baseball. What do you think about that? Like, just I don't want to
get filmed.
Yeah, I know
Long
we'll
as it
get
gets
filmed. I
filmed.
know we'll get filmed. We'll get film on it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We will get
I
film on
want
it.
to film your first throw.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about it last night. We'll be like into the ground. Like, so you watched the first pitch. I was at a Ranger game a few weeks ago. So, anyways, the state of the glove was upsetting, but I just did how it's shedding on the table. That's how bad the shit it is. But I was glad I still had it and it made the trip. That was like
Good.
that was like a
Yeah.
real man thing that I was bringing the glove. That all the things that went in the storage and this didn't.
You strike me as a guy who may go to the game and bring that glove going forward.
No, I used to.
I'm saying going forward. I bet now that you know where it is, you
No,
probably
this
will
glove's
wear it.
being retired after this episode
Okay.
because of the state. I'm getting a new glove, which I think I'm going to make you buy now that you've humiliated me. We're going to go get gloves. We're going to film the whole thing.
Okay.
So, anyway, speaking of our first guest, because that's why we did the whole baseball glove thing, and I have been wanting him to come on. He's a friend, known him a long time. A lot of people in Dallas know who he is. If you're a Rangers fan and you don't know who he is, you're not a fan. That's what I'd say. And not only that, he's a well-balanced guy because does a lot of things. So we're going to have really somebody special, and I hope you're excited. I don't know if you've met this guest before.
I've never.
I thought you might have.
No.
So I'm looking forward to introducing him and having an incredible conversation, which will involve, maybe he'll have a thought or two about the baseball glove. But nonetheless, it's going to be exciting. We're going to talk a little baseball because we're in the heat of summer. We're going to talk to Jamey Newberg in just a minute. Would you like to be our guest?
Or is there someone you would like to see on the show?
DM us through social at Playground Foreground.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Today's guest is my friend, Jamey Newberg. He is lawyer, journalist, and professor. Welcome to the Playground, Jamey.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So excited for Jon to get to visit with you. I always like when I see you. It's fun to catch up. But for our loyal Playground fans that don't know you, just kind of 2 minutes on you, how you got to where you are, kind of all the things you do, because it's pretty fascinating.
So I grew up in Dallas, went to Hillcrest High School. Was big into, like, my high school days, I was big into playing baseball and going and working in the journalism department. Those are the two things, like, I remember that kind of stuck. Had a basketball coach growing up who talked me into going to law school. There was, like, no history of it in my family. But he was a solo practitioner in town when he wasn't coaching, and so I would work for him in the summers. And he first convinced me to go to UT undergrad in a program called Plan 2, which my high school counselors had never heard of.
Is this your high school basketball coach?
It was like a select coach, so it wasn't at the school. And so he started telling me about this Plan 2 program, and I was applying to schools around the country, but I decided to apply to UT also. And I'd actually accepted, I was going to Duke University. I had sent in my papers as a done deal. And I woke up one day, I think it was in March of my senior year, and just changed my mind. Like, I'm going to go to UT. I'm going to do that. So went down to Austin, spent my 4 years there. And like most people that go down to Austin, fell in love with it, started applying to law schools because of Frank. Frank Shore was the lawyer's name. Got into UT, so stayed there. So I spent 7 years in Austin, undergrad and law school, and then got an opportunity to come right back to Dallas to work for a law firm.
Was Roger Clemens at Texas when you were
He
there?
was gone by then. Yeah, he had gotten out probably about 8 years before that. Okay. But we'd see him all the time. You know,
he's that much older than us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Cliff Gustafson was still the coach there, so it was sort of like still the Clemens era. And I tried out for the team actually a couple times because I wasn't able to shake that bug, and I figured, like, get out in the field, give it a shot, and then I'll never wonder what if. So anyway, came back to Dallas after that. So that was 31 years ago, started practicing law. And a few years after that, and I'm sure we may get into some more detail on this, but I started writing sort of on a really small level as just sort of a distraction for myself because the job's very intense, especially when you're a young lawyer. and you're being told exactly what to do, when to do, and you don't really control your docket. Like, it's intense. And I'm a litigator, which is adversarial. So anyway, I started writing, and I don't think consciously then I was doing it to take the edge off, but it had that effect. It was good like switch flipper for me day to day. And that grew in a lot of ways far more than I ever dreamed it would. And so I'm still writing. That's now been 27 years. And then about 6 years ago, I got an opportunity to start teaching at SMU, just one class in the sports management department. Love it. It's my favorite thing I do.
What class is it?
It's got a long name, but it's generally a sports law class. And I think they approached me just because I kind of like check both boxes. I have, like, I'm not only a lawyer, but a lot of what I do in my practice is I represent sports franchises. And so it kind of was a good fit for them. I was like, guys, I haven't even taught like fifth grade, which one day I wanted to do. I thought that's what I would retire into, is teaching. They wanted me to teach a college course, and I was like, all right, I know how much tuition cost. My daughter was going there at the time.
Right.
So I know how much my class will cost these families. I think you're taking a big risk. But they took it and loved it. Just taught my 14th semester, and it will have been my last in the undergrad, because they're moving me to law school.
What percent of your students are athletes?
It has ranged. I would say it averaged about a third of them. I had 40 students a semester, and I'd usually have somewhere around 10 to 18 of them were athletes.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when I talk to the student athletes, like, what are you studying? How many of them are actually majoring in sports management?
You know what's really interesting that I found that was a surprise to me? My best students and my worst students were the athletes. Like, I was warned, if that's the right word, that you're going to have athletes in there that will be falling asleep, that will be watching YouTube, will be completely checked out. Just know going in that it's not, don't take it personally. So that was my expectation. But I would say most semesters, my one or two superstars in that class were athletes. And I think I figured out it's because they know how to apportion their time to stay really focused, if they're wired that way and want to take advantage of the academics.
Right.
Some of them were really, really good at it.
So I've enjoyed watching you when you post stuff about the people, the guests that you have come to your class. I mean, I think that's really incredible over the years.
When he posts where?
So he posts on social media a lot of. I mean, that's how. I mean, Jamey and I know each other, but I follow, like all of us do, and I could tell, even you saying it today, how proud you are of your work that you do at SMU. You're really excited, even when we talked about coming on, how prepared you are, how serious you take it. The students are lucky. And then the people that you expose them to, which is really like, I kind of want to come audit a class, and would love to do that. We should do that if you'll let us, I think.
Definitely. When I get the course evaluations, the student's favorite thing of it is not me. It's the people I bring in. So yeah, that's been fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever met Clemens?
I have not met Roger Clemens. No.
I have.
Really?
I have an autograph. Yes. So I worked for George Strait. I don't know if you know that, but I traveled on tour with him and did sponsorship for him in my 20s. And we were playing stadium shows in the spring training destinations, Tampa and Arizona. I was in Phoenix, and he wanted to meet George Strait. That was my responsibility. I did all the meet and greets. So my favorite part of that tour was all of the athletes, because George Strait is like an icon to them. So I spent some time talking. He autographed my hat, and I was a huge fan. So it's one of my favorite moments. So.
Did you know George Strait pretty well?
Yeah, I worked very closely with him and his management. It was a really fun job. It was sort of my version of Almost Famous, traveling on that tour. It was Tim McGraw, Faith Hill.
Did you meet Tim McGraw?
Yes, Tim McGraw. And I have pictures of me two-stepping, believe it or not, with Faith Hill. She was pregnant with her second child at the time. Leanne Womack was on that tour. So it was a big stadium tour. They played actually here at the old Texas Stadium, and they were like the first festival. I think, and I don't know if it's still the case, George Strait is the third grossing artist of all time, by the way. Kind of interesting.
Who's the highest? Michael Jackson?
I think that Michael Jackson.
Taylor Swift?
Well, now, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
it's changed. But nonetheless, meeting Roger Clemens was exciting.
Can I ask one question about that for both of you? And I'm asking this precisely. Do you believe Roger Clemens thinks he took steroids?
I think so. I do.
Yeah, I think so. I think he knew.
I think he could come in here and pass a lie detector that he didn't take.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
I don't think he's just alone in that.
To convince yourself of just a different reality.
Yeah.
Like, you tell yourself long enough that something's the case, I think he thinks he didn't take him.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I thought this morning I saw on the crawl that Justin Tucker, is after such an illustrious career. Our Longhorns are just sometimes when they get into these professional arenas, they don't make us proud. And he was one.
Justin Tucker.
So Justin Tucker was the all-time kicking percentage for the Ravens.
Oh gosh, kickers!
He's the best.
I think he'll be. There's
Hall
so
of
many
Famer.
Hall of Fame kickers. Well, he may not now.
Now I know, right? So that's what I'm saying. He's tarnished this career. I think 50, 60. He's old. I mean, he's still drilling them. So I saw this morning he's got a 10-week suspension. They released him, and he will get signed because somebody that needs a kicker later in the season will get him because he's that good. But I thought of it this morning. I'm like, gosh, just such disappointing. Durant has been a disappointment to me.
Wow.
Even though he's a 1 year. I just think he's like the third sidecar. He's like of the three, he should be the one, and he's always like the three on his team. He's just never lived up to what I thought his potential was. I don't know.
Wow.
You don't feel that way? What about you, Jamey?
I agree with that. I sort of hate that the path he's chosen in the NBA is just to sort of hop around and talk his way out of markets. And when he joined the Warriors after they beat his Thunder,
right,
that seemed like, okay, the best team in the world. I'm going to go join them as, like you said, the third sidecar. And I think he's got a chance now with Houston to sort of be the lead dog and maybe change his reputation. I mean, I'm a fan just because he's a Longhorn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for such a great player, I think he's thought of somebody who's kind of like hopped around at his own volition, and that's usually not a great way for your legacy to lay out.
How are you practicing law now?
What do you mean, how am I?
Like, are you?
Yeah.
In what
full time.
capacity?
I'm trial lawyer, just down the street. Our firm actually used to be in this building. Yeah, I do it. I do it full time. I still use the writing to sort of like, flip the switch, like I said earlier. The teaching, the first couple semesters, I put a lot of time into making sure that I wasn't as terrible as I feared I would be, just to be overly prepared. Probably overdid it. So like for that year or so, like I was burning it on both ends, because I wasn't backing off the full-time job of practicing law. So now it's gotten more manageable now that I've got the teaching thing down a little bit more.
So, Jon, it's interesting that you ask, like, do you still practice law? Because that's one of the things, what Jamey does. Like, I don't really know how you balance your schedule, so I want to talk about that. But just curious, do you prepare the same way for your class that you do for a court case? I know as a litigator, you really have to be prepared.
Yeah, so that's a tough one to answer because every case is different. I mean, you get similarities. There are some overlaps, but there's, 31 years into this thing, I get cases where I have to go educate myself on some new area of engineering or construction or, whatever the case may be in that case. They're never alike. The class gets replicated. Now, the way I teach it, I know because I've got kids the same age generally as my students. I know to grab their attention, it's got to be, relatable, I think is the word that they use now. So I do tweak the class every semester to update it with whatever's going on in the sports world that touches on the legal world. Because if I don't do that, if I teach out of the textbook, I'll be bored. So I know that the 20-year-olds will be too. So the first couple semesters that I mentioned where I had to put a lot of time into figuring out how to teach this, that was probably more like getting a new case in. Because it's a sort of a blank sheet. Yeah. Like, how am I going to present this to students the same way as how am I going to present this to a jury? But as time has gone on, the course, which, like I said, now I'm sort of transitioning to something brand new in the law school, but it was basically taking the same curriculum and probably spending 5 hours each week updating the way I present it based on what's currently happening in the sports world, but it's not starting over like when a new case comes in.
So I'm curious. I mean, the Newberg Report I want you to mention that because I follow it in the distance, not so regularly, but I love, and I happened to read it this morning before I knew I was going to see you, and it came up, and I just love what you wrote because I knew you were in Baltimore this week. You were putting some of that on social media, and it's kind of an interesting week given what's happened with the Rangers just this week. I mean, I know we're talking about the Mavericks and all that going on, but the Rangers nearly they were on the path to maybe 2 no-hitters this week.
I have no idea what's happening with the Rangers.
Yeah, I know you don't. I know you don't follow it, but they were sort of they're Jamey can speak to it better. Obviously, that's what he does. But just curious, tell us about the Newberg Report, and then just the passion that you write with, the perspective you take. I so appreciate it. But just curious how it started, what it is, and
I mean, how it started was, like I said, I was 3-4 years into practicing law, and I had some buddies that this was before like the internet was really, there was the blog was not a word yet.
Yeah.
I would send out an email pretty much every day to like 7 or 8 buddies of mine that were baseball guys. Just like, hey, here's what happened like in the Rangers minor league system last night. Just to like have something, it's kind of like it was almost like a chat, like a group chat would be today. You know, these were not cell phone days in the late 90s. That started to grow sort of like organically, like someone say, hey, can you add my boss to the email list? Or, you know, hey, my father-in-law is really into this, add him. So the list started growing to where there were people in the chat, which I started every day. I started with the first email. There were people I didn't know, which is cool. Like, you know, it's just the community was kind of growing. And the Rangers were good then. They went to the playoffs in 96 and in 98. Yeah. So this is 1998 when I'm starting this. Somebody put Mike Reiner on the list. I don't remember how he got on, but he started like instant messaging me online because he was insanely interested about the minor league system. Hey, tell me about this double-A pitcher, Jeff Zimmerman. Like, you know, it's like, right. So we just like started talking baseball all the time. And I was like, I felt like at that point, okay, I've made it. Mike Reiner wants to talk to me about the Texas Rangers. Like, that's really cool. Like, that felt like that was the pinnacle. Well, again, Rangers ended up making the playoffs that year, got fed to the Yankees for the second time in 3 years, right. Lost. 1999 starts, and now Reiner and I are talking a good bunch, and there's probably 100 people on this email group. I didn't know he was going to do this, but the first day of the season, he spent a segment on the hard line in the afternoon reading from what I wrote that morning. Wow. And he called it the Newberg Minor League Report. He named it. Okay, this is before it was just called the Newberg Report. Newberg Minor League Report. And he and Grego did it the next day and the next day. And it sort of became, I think it was 440. Like every day they had the Newberg Minor League Report segment. They developed a theme song for it. They never had me on the air. I shouldn't say never. I probably was on once a month. They would, hey, there was a trade. You want to come on and talk about it? Sure. Okay, so now I feel like now I've made it. Like my stuff's getting read on the ticket. Like that's insane to me. Well, he started giving out like, I guess there wasn't a website yet. So he would, I don't remember how he did it. I don't think he gave out my email address, but he sort of like gave people a way where they could sign on to. And then later that year, someone that was on the list did build a website for me. And now things starts to really grow. Again, this was not my intention. Like my intention was just to have something.
What is it today? Like how big is it? How many? I mean, you have subscription, right?
Yeah. So in 2018, The Athletic came to Dallas. Up until then, for 20 years, I'd just been writing on my own. And I'd had opportunities to join on with different groups. Hey, come write for us. And I was like, I'm good. Like it's not my full-time thing. When The Athletic came to town, I was already a subscriber. And if you guys don't know, it's a national, it's really an international sports website that's now owned by the New York Times. But at the time, it was not. It was its own entity, its own outfit. And they had sports departments in every major market in all 4 major sports. And they came to Dallas in 2018 and they approached Bob Sturm on the ticket to sort of build his team. And he asked me to cover the Rangers. At that point, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Like The Athletic is coming, and there's people on The Athletic that I would never not read. So like I want to be part of this team. And so they brought me on. I did that for 6 years. Yes, 6 seasons. End of 23, they started, actually before that, they started trimming staff when the New York Times came in and bought. At the end of 23, they told me, hey, we're going to let you go. I actually had to ask them, this is like December of 23, are you bringing me back 24? I haven't seen a contract. Just let me know. Right. Like, oh, can you get on the phone in 10 minutes? Sure. And I knew what that call was going to be about. Like, we're just going to cut our freelancers. All good. And at that point, I got onto Substack. And so now, for the first time, I'm a subscription model. Like I had never done that until 2024, last year.
Well, your writing is, for somebody who has done a lot of things, I think is some of the best. As a Ranger fan, and you and I share that. I'm deeply passionate about it. You this morning reminded me how great you are. I didn't even read past the firewall because it just came up in my and. how you captured the last week and where the Rangers are, what you did for a lot of people who do care about the minor leagues. I mean, that is what makes baseball baseball, is how they bring players through. It's incredible. I'm just curious, like, is that you continue to do all three things in your life? Is it? I mean, that's something you can do forever, right? I mean, I kind of think you're going to be one of those guys. I think they've talked about you. I hear like people talk about you. You're so tied to the franchise. I know you may not see it that way, but loyal fans do. And I don't know what they would really do without you at this point.
I don't know what I would do without it. Like seriously, it is. And I wrote about it this morning. The timing wasn't on purpose. I didn't write that so that you'd read it right before I sat down in this chair. But like today was sort of writing about sports as hope and belief. And I do that from time to time because the people that read my stuff know I'm not a beat reporter and I don't pretend to be a journalist. I'm writing as a fan. It's like as a fan's perspective. And I know I talked about like it started out as a minor league thing. I got away from that after like 10 years. It's really been a big league thing since then. And it touches on the minor leagues, the whole process. But I sort of write about baseball and sports as sort of like a distraction, and we are living in times where distractions are really good. And today was a little bit about that, about belief on and the sort of the high level of reward that it promises without the same level of risk, because it doesn't, for most of us, doesn't really matter. So like it doesn't carry the same kind of like risk that if you were a player or a coach or you're working in the game, there's some risk you could lose your job, so forth, if the team's losing. But for a fan, the risk is not horrible. You may have a bad day, bad week if your team loses, but I think the reward is great, that it creates community. It gives you an outlet for hope. For me, for these nearly 30 years, it's given me a really good distraction from a really stressful profession. So mentally, I think it's been very healthy for me. And that's typically I think sort of the mentality I write with.
I'm a casual baseball fan. I didn't know we had 2 no-hitters almost this week. Yeah. But I follow the game and I follow sports. And I feel like baseball, I'm interested in your feedback on this. Baseball strikes me as the sport where ownership is most accountable for their performance next season, because you can do anything you want. I don't think there's a salary cap.
There's not. There's luxury tax thresholds where you basically have to pay, $1 on top of every dollar once you pass this.
But you
point.
can pay whatever you want.
You can,
right? Yep. I sense there's really no revenue sharing.
There is some, like they call it a competitive balance tax, where there's a certain grouping of teams that do collect on that, but not every team collects.
Right. So it strikes me as the teams at the top. You can also change the dimensions of your field. Mm-hmm. Like you have to have the bases a certain dimension, but outfield wall.
Yep.
Do whatever you want with it. So it strikes me as a sport that's the most capitalist in the world. So if your team's not good this year and they're not good next year, the owner is absolutely accountable, because they could fix it. They could throw all kinds of money at whatever they wish.
I said to Jamey before we started taping that what's different about baseball is the season that the Rangers won, they had really cobbled together, you got to get on a heater. And so while you think you can go buy your way, it's proven that over a 182 game season, and the long haul in the playoffs, you got to be healthy at the right time on a heater. And like the Rangers right now, Jamey can speak to it, right? This is the best pitching, and really they've assembled and spent a lot of money. So I don't think that that's necessarily true.
Well, I mean,
I think you can throw money at it, but it doesn't.
We went off and spent a ton of money and won the World Series.
Yeah,
and not with the team that they expected, though. Not at all. Right?
Yeah, that's fair. But to John's point,
that guy went out and spent a fortune. And the first time I ever saw his face,
we agree on that,
was on the back of the stadium deal.
Yeah,
and he didn't even talk.
Yeah.
I was like, "You're my kind of owner." You went out and just bankrolled this thing. You got sick of what happened. You fixed it, and you won.
And I'm a big fan of owners that not only do that, but then let other people talk.
Yeah, I've never heard him speak once.
Yeah,
maybe I heard him say 2 sentences on the stand.
Are you still a Cowboy fan?
Yes.
Okay, we don't need to. We can move on, but I just to your point, really quickly. I just want to point out. We've mentioned how busy you are, Jon. You're extremely busy. I think you do a lot of things outside of your single career. How do you do it all, Jamey? And just for people who are paying attention, how do you find balance as a busy person? You're not really spreading yourself thin, but you're just curious on your perspective on it.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and it's kind of hard for me to answer because I am who I am, and I don't really know a different way. But I know, John, you do a lot of things. Scott, you do too. But so you guys can probably relate to this, but it's just sort of the way of life for me to compartmentalize a little bit, not get into a rut on one thing. And I think that developing the two outlets that I have, which is writing and teaching, it not only takes the edge off of the day job, but the teaching I knew was sort of a way of quote unquote giving back that, like I had said earlier, I eventually wanted to do in retirement or whatever. I never thought of writing as sort of giving back or being helpful to other people, but I've learned over the years just from feedback and meeting fans who have read things that I've written that it is helpful to some people. It's their own distraction to open up their phones or their laptops and read something about something less stressful than their day-to-day. And again, I'm not writing a game story on what happened last night in, inverted pyramid journalistic style. It's not what I do. There's very good people on the beat doing that I read every day. I'm writing from a more emotional place. And it's not always a positive emotion. If the team's doing poorly, I express that and how I feel about that.
That's why I love you so much. I love reading what you write because it's what I feel. And I'm an emotional person. I think our fans and John knows that. I'm sensitive and I care. But what you said this morning, and I think it's just pointed that you happen to be on today, that we talk about belief and hope and what baseball gives us in this extremely divisive time. And yeah, baseball right now for me, I'm struggling with it, the Rangers, because I feel like we got to the top of the mountain and it was something I'd always hoped for as a kid. And in this town, it's so hard. But the way that you capture them, your love for that team, really is like every fan's voice. And it's just, I wish more people did that. I wish you could probably point me to some people that do it, but I don't know anybody that does it better than you. And it's a style that I really appreciate.
Well, I appreciate that. And I definitely gravitate towards writers covering other teams, even in other markets, that have that sort of same, like, hey, I'm a fan. I'm not completely objective. Know that out front. I'm not writing objectively. There are people that do that professionally that are great at it, but I'm not objective. I'm writing raw emotion. Whatever I'm feeling about the team is what I'm writing that day.
I did it in a different way when I quit the Cowboys. That's why I asked John, because when I was really frustrated and I'd reached the point, I split my love really between the Rangers and the Cowboys as a child. I think you did too. More Cowboys probably, right?
I was a Buddy Bell guy.
Yeah, I love Buddy Bell.
Because remember in the 80s, the Cowboys were no good.
Yeah.
Well, they were in the early 80s, they were good, but then.
But as a child, I got to go. It was the experience. It was all the things that you talk about, like this week in Baltimore, you're at a restaurant right? It's the whole thing. It's not just what happens in the 9 innings or the 4 quarters.
Why is Baltimore Stadium still operational and we had to have a new one? That was like 3 years
Decent
before
question. That despite the fact that this week I was in as hot an environment for a night game as I've been even back in the Arlington Stadium days.
Where were you?
I was in Baltimore.
Okay.
And the heat index was 108 at first pitch, like the evening on Tuesday night this week. But I say that just to say that is why they had to make a change here, because people weren't showing up in July and August. It was just too hot. And maybe more importantly to the ownership, it was tough to get free agent pitchers in particular to sign here when they are good enough to sign anywhere they wanted in the country. Yeah. They weren't going to come here and have to pitch through this heat for 4 to 6 months.
You couldn't go to the stadium, John. I mean, I don't know how often you ever went, but you couldn't go. I'd take the girls. We actually were talking about it last week. The seats were so hot, you'd push the green plastic seats down and you'd burn your legs.
Yeah.
Seriously, in June or July. You're looking at me like it's crazy. It's true. So,
but that's a big reason that they built the stadium here, is just so they could put a retractable roof on it. And it's been like I was not super optimistic that it was going to work, because I'm an old school, like baseball doesn't need a roof and it definitely doesn't need artificial surfaces to play on, but I love it. Like I can go in the heat of summer and when I walk out at the end of the game, it's going to feel like a hairdryer outside, but during the game it's 74 degrees and pitchers are signing here now. And it's just a better environment, and it's been competitively good for them, I think.
Have you spent any time at the new stadium?
2 games.
Yeah, I went 2 weeks ago.
I get thrown off by the light.
Yeah,
it doesn't look natural.
It feels dark. Feels real dark to me. Like that, but Houston feels the same. I have that same
Well,
experience.
why do I not feel that way when I'm watching a football game?
Fair question. Maybe football stadiums are so much bigger that maybe you don't feel like you're just being caved in by the lighting. I don't know. It's a good question.
My first impression of it was the stimuli, like the big scoreboard in the outfield. It was just real hard for me to like settle into where I want to sit. At both of the previous parks, I had a spot, understood where to be, where I wanted to watch the game from. This place, I was there but I did have that same experience. You walked in, it was a hot day.
Yeah.
We went on Juneteenth. It was a day game.
Yeah.
And I just thought, if this was a day game back in the old stadium,
No chance.
no chance.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the old man in me but it is real nice when you walk in the door. It's like, it's temperate. I mean, it feels great.
Look, there were days in August I wouldn't go, and if I won't go, I know that I'm as so like ridiculously insane a fan that if I was choosing not to go, like there were clearly a lot of people making that same decision when it was not even as hot as it got in August. So it's been a good move.
Who were your favorite sports writers growing up?
Growing up, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I loved Skip Bayless as a writer. Loved him. I just loved his style of writing. Can't stand what he's become. But as a writer, I gravitated toward him. Loved Blackie Sherrod.
What was it? Scattershooting.
Hither and
Hither's
Yon.
Yon.
Yeah. Great stuff.
You love Skip Bayless. I remember that, right? You used to like even before we had the internet, John, you used to have real, I don't know how you would put it out there, but I remember that, recall that.
I like him.
Exceptional writer before he, fell in love with the TV persona.
Yeah, his book was pretty fascinating.
Yes, a couple of them. Yeah, about the Cowboys. He was a big one.
What about Frank DeFord? You reading?
Yeah. So like when was it the National? Was that the sports newspaper that was out for a while that he started?
That's right.
Yeah.
I knew him as a Sports Illustrated writer more, but
yeah. Frank DeFord was great. Sort of like the epitome of what you think of as like an old 1960s writer. He still had that look.
Yeah.
Great writer. There was a guy that wrote for Sports Illustrated and I think the New York Times named Daniel Okrent, he was great. And he wrote a book called 9 Innings, which is still my favorite baseball book ever written. It's out of print now, but I still buy it for people. I find it on eBay or something. He went to a game in 1982 that had no meaning, like the middle of the season, and just thought, I'm going to write a story. I'm going to write a book about a meaningless game. And he got into backstories on the third base umpire and the backup catcher and the scout who signed this guy, and talking through what's going on in everybody's head before this pitch. And I love it.
Did you read the Sandy Koufax biography?
Did not.
Oh, that was cool. Because they write it in like 18 chapters, and it's one chapter's the first
top of first.
The perfect game.
Yeah, cool, that's cool. I haven't read that one.
So with all this talk about great writers, what are your thoughts about how AI is changing writing? How are you using it? AI
not only overwhelms me right now, but it kind of irritates me, and that's coming from the professor, because I no longer have any idea who's giving me their own work. Like I thought I could beat it I created some writing assignments that I knew you at least couldn't get help with Google. Like I was creating stuff that was very niche, changing it up every semester so you couldn't find like old students' work on it. But I came to learn, I think one student actually told me this, like not only can you have AI write this, you can tell them, write it like I'm a B student in college. So it dumbs it down a little bit to try to throw a teacher off. And it works. And so I no longer, like I've got some good sense, because once I know a student for a couple months and then I get his or her work that looks nothing like what they presented themselves for the first 2 months of class, like I know this is, but I can't prove it. And so, I'll make a remark like this has like sort of an AI feel to it, but I'm going to like give you the benefit of the doubt. And it's very irritating because like I feel like my job is to teach them and to get them to where they're thinking critically and able to produce work that reflects that. And I don't know any longer that it's their work.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's having a profound impact. We could ask this to any guest about how it's it's funny in social media. For example, on LinkedIn, which I know we had an exchange about, you may or may not be using it. LinkedIn provides a AI generating tool, so you can write your post. I like to, as a person, be human, and write in a human way. So I'll put something in AI, see how it writes it, and then immediately take myself back for that reason. I don't want somebody to speak for me, and I don't like that. So it may seem old, and it does create some conciseness and maybe some thoughts about it. but I want the humanity in my writing. And if when I read that, if I experience that, I could tell. I can tell when it's like, and people can tell. So I'm just curious, like how you're using it.
Man, I continue to respectfully disagree with you on this.
That's okay.
I would not go to LinkedIn and use their AI button. There's no way I'd use it. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is develop a relationship with ChatGPT, where ChatGPT is learning how you like to communicate, what your relationships are, what you're doing. And then you dial in, hey, chat, here's what I just went through. Here's what I experienced. And I want to write this piece, and here's kind of a framework of what I want to write. Can you help me make it better? And I'm telling you, it is making my writing chiseled in a way that it's never been chiseled before. And I consider myself to be an excellent writer. We grew up in a school district that really made you write. At SMU, I had some teachers grind on me about writing, and my dad made me read Skip Bayless as a kid so I could see, hey, here's what a good writer, here's how he's communicating here's how you're feeling his energy. Because you feel an energy from Bayless and from certain great writers. And so I think chat is really weaponizing my writing. And what I'm realizing more than ever, I went to SMU and gave a speech to start off a board meeting I was running. And I knew who was going to be in the room, and I had to acknowledge like 6 or 7 people that had done a lot for the university in the past 5 to 30 years. And I told chat, here's who's going to be in the room. Here's what I want to acknowledge. Help me write an opener that's pretty funny. And they gave me a great opener. And what I realized is that going forward, everybody has access to exceptional content. It's how effective can you deliver it. That becomes the game. I believe.
I can see the sort of your approach because of the way you write and how you write, that the fan needs to stay in it. So I think there is a time and place. We can agree to disagree on this for sure. But in some business writing, because I use it at work for much the same way, right? Review these policies and present it to a certain type of company and the CFO, right? So that voice. But in my own writing, when I'm representing myself, I don't think that does a good job of letting you know who I am. And so I just struggle with it probably for the same reasons that you do.
Yeah, I mean, John, when you say opens my mind a little bit to just to go to chat and just like give it a shot at writing something in my style and see what happens. I would never do anything with it because it just feels like a shortcut to me that I'm not willing to. And again, it's not just the teaching experience, but it's also become a very dangerous territory in my profession. Like there are absolutely lawyers who are writing briefs that are not writing briefs. They're having AI create briefs, and some have gotten called on it by judges, and there's actually been a judge who's been called on it for actually writing, basically creating a ruling through AI. And like, it is such a danger spot right now where people are saying there's going to be no need for associates or paralegals 5 years from now, that all these kids going to law school, like, dude, unless you're going to set up your own shingle, like you may be obsolete coming out of school because, lawyers and their clients, the clients, hey, if I can pay you for 30 minutes work to create a brief through AI instead of paying you 8 hours for actually researching and writing it, like I'm glad that I'm close to getting out of the practice of law at my age. Like,
those same lawyers, Jamey, would be creating their resume and LinkedIn profile with AI to not get hired by AI, which I think is so funny. So that's just there are benefits to it, and we're investing a lot in our business in it. But I think there's a line in the sand, and to your point, I think we don't know. It's really an interesting time, but something we should pay attention to. And really, it's probably a great conversation with a lot of our guests, John, because it is impacting us for sure.
I could probably do a better job of introducing my SMU guest speakers by doing it the way you did it. Like I should just have it generate, it's like an interesting, funny intro instead of trying, because those are the things I sort of like stew over. Because like I've got guests coming in that like they deserve like, a solid intro and some good engagement from the students because they're taking time out that they don't really have. And I probably fail at it.
I take the chat and I edit it further.
Yeah, no,
it just really gives you a good. It tightens up the framework quite a bit.
And I would say, like for this run of show, right, it would have been real easy, Jamey, to ask it to prepare questions for a guy like you, but that was done with thought about who you are, what you do, and I just don't think it will feel natural. Like if I was using it to prepare for this conversation, it wouldn't take it in a direction. So it is interesting.
But you don't know that because you haven't tried it. I think it wouldn't.
I have tried it. Actually, I use it at work.
I'm gonna challenge you with the next run of show. I'm gonna show you how chat can make this better.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that means you're going to do it, right?
I'll have to read it.
Right. Read it or do it. Either two things you haven't done before the show, but it's fine.
Hey, that's humiliating me.
Right.
It's not.
I'm glad.
To learn more about today's guest, Jamey Newberg, and subscribe to the Newberg Report, check out Instagram at Newberg Report. And Jamey's also on Substack at Jamey Newberg.
All right, topics from the hat. Just like baseball, there's 3 strikes and there's 3 topics, Jamey. One of our favorite segments. John, you picked the first one.
Thank you. Most inspiring professor.
Oh, wow. Really? Can I change the noun to teacher?
Sure. Yeah.
So I had a teacher in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at Preston Hollow Elementary. His name is Judy Campos. And I think she was in her mid-20s. It was probably her first job. The class was TAG. I think stood for like talented and gifted. It was like there was a lot of creative writing and logic problems. And she opened my mind to, number one, liking school, and tapped into something that I still depend on heavily, which is creative outlets. School became an opportunity to like learn how to not just critically think, but creatively think and creatively produce. She unlocked that for me, and I still remember like moments from those 3 years, which is strange to me because I don't really remember 8th and 9th and 10th grade very much, but 4 through 6 I do. Reconnected with her a few years ago, and she just retired from actually Greenhill a few years back. We're still in communication. Absolutely inspiring to me. That's the one that sticks out for me.
What about you?
Doc Breeden. Took him 4 times at SMU, history teacher. I minored in Doc Breeden.
Mine would be at UT. I took a interpersonal communication course in my track in the communication school, Professor Daly, and I took a class from him. I was invited to do a program at the business school a few years ago, and he was still teaching.
What's his first name?
John.
Okay,
Yeah.
because my son is in communications at UT.
Yeah, it was like the most sought after class. It was he's an excellent professor. Really, the skills are still applied today. It's funny to see how he had tailored it, moved it up with technology coming in, but really, in terms of professors, most inspiring for sure.
That's awesome. I'll need to recommend him to my son.
I think he's still. I hadn't checked the last couple of years. All right, Jamey, pick the next one.
Dance dad?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, you have a daughter.
Yes.
And I have a daughter
Yeah.
that spent time. We were drill team dads.
Yeah.
We're not the same year, but a year apart.
Yep.
So just curious, like we talk a lot about sports. We haven't really talked about dance. I don't know if it's not something that John's unsure about what this means, but
No, I know what it means. You're not going to like my position on it.
that's okay. Just curious what that strikes you as, like just.
Yeah, so it actually makes me think of what Erica spent more time on in high school, which was musical theater. She did pace setters. She did the dance team. She actually was on the dance team at Indiana for the football team. So it wasn't cheerleading, but the dance team is what we call drill team in Texas. She performed at halftime of IU football games before transferring to SMU. So she stuck with the dance a little bit. But when I think of being a dance dad, I think more of being a theater dad because that's part of it. But where Erica for me stood out, the memories I have are, not so much the dancing aspect of it, but the singing, the performing, what she was able to do in front of thousands of people that I can't imagine having done at that age or at this age.
Well, just Erica went to J.J. Pierce, and I know John. Given that we're on the playground, we talk a lot about our high school. One of the best theater programs in the country still is. So I saw Erica perform. She was awesome. For me, I'll just tell you that the reason I put it in there is it's interesting. You spend a lot of time talking about baseball and your son playing baseball, and it's been a part of your life. But as a dance dad, I remark to others that it's one of the very few things where you send your daughter or son, if they dance, but you're not really there on the sidelines. You go watch a recital, but most of the time it's just with them and the coach, and the parents aren't getting so involved. And I remark that was really great because what I've seen in the trend is that parents are there all the time watching practices. Doesn't really happen when you're a dance dad. Does that?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about the experience of being Erica's dad during that time was she was doing things that did not come from mom and dad.
Yeah.
Like, once she got to an age, and Max had his own like development in different ways, like once they start doing things that are theirs, very individual and not something they learn from mom or learn from dad, it's really cool. And like Erica's performances were 100% that for me. Like she developed this and cultivated this on her own. And it's not something she like grew up seeing mom and dad do, or really anybody do, and it became her thing. And that's, as a dad, was just awesome.
What do you got on it?
So this is a viewpoint of 15 years ago, but when I had 3 girls, I told Laura, I don't want to be part of the dance world. She said, "Fine, no softball players."
Right, there's a trade-off. That's funny. That's pretty funny. Although the softball players,
we have a softball player.
I know.
2-time MVP.
I know. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, I'll pull the last one, and it's belief. I mentioned in the earlier segment this morning, you talked about belief. I think you mentioned it as well. Just curious, you talked about it in concept of sports, but how does it strike you?
It's a big question. I think as we grow older and the stress points shift, different aspects of things happening with family or with work or with the country and the world, sports has always been that outlet for me where I can throw hope and faith and belief and optimism, as unfounded as it may be. I can throw all of this at a team I care about, or pro or college, and invest in it and give myself something to forget about everything else for 3 hours. And in my case, more than 3 hours, because I may sit down and write about it when it's over with. And so that aspect, that's where like that's what the word belief means to me. And it does, for me, it doesn't just apply to sports, but that's the most tangible way for me to talk about it since I write about it. But it gives me something that I can get behind, that my neighbor may be getting behind too, or my kids, friends, parents. We may disagree on a lot of things, but when it's Sunday afternoon kickoff or Rangers in the playoff, like, we're going to have something like that we share as a community, maybe different levels of interest and insanity, but we share it. And it's something we might have a common belief in. And I think that's something really cool about sports, especially when you live in a market where sports teams reside. Like, it's one thing that, I care a lot about Texas Longhorn football and baseball, basketball too, a little bit. That's still 200 miles away. It's not the same as the pro teams I care about, where I may run into you at a burger joint and we might be talking about the game that we were both at last night or that we're going to this weekend. Right. And like that to me, that's sort of like belief. It's just from a mental health standpoint, I think it's very good. I talk about this with my son all the time, like how lucky we feel that we are sports fans. Like, it'd be hard to imagine if that wasn't such a big part of our lives, because it does offer such a positive, potentially positive. I don't gamble, so that that's like right. That's when I talked earlier. Like, there's very little risk. That's a risk, but I stay away from it because I would never want that to be something that introduces that level of risk into my life. But there's just so much to be gained in my mind from caring about a sports team, because it just doesn't have a whole lot of downside and a ton of upside.
Come on.
I think you've experienced some sports fandom downside.
Well, you like to bring it up. I have, but since we're talking about that, my comment was going to be Ted Lasso. That's what I thought about. And I happened to be at a conference I mentioned earlier this week, and the woman who gave the keynote spoke about Ted Lasso, how they touch the sign. Yeah. You know what it says on the sign? It says believe.
Right.
And Ted Lasso has had a profound impact. The fact that at a conference about organ transplantation, your comment about belief, in this very heated time of the world, if we don't have, like you say, the distraction or belief in something, I don't know what we have. And Ted Lasso, I think, opened the eyes in a very simple way. So Ted Lasso had the team didn't always experience much like my sports career, but they believed, and I think it's captivated a nation, much like maybe I did in a different way. Maybe it's not because of what I was doing on the field, but the simple joy I had for playing the sport or being around the other athletes who were. Yeah. So, well, Jamey, it's been such a treat to have you on. First of all, we're friends, but more than that, I just admire what you do, how you do what you do. It's incredible how much you give yourself. Your students are lucky. Your clients are lucky. I think the Rangers Nation is really lucky. So thanks for coming on the playground. I appreciate it. You guys are great at what you do. I've watched episodes. I've never sat in this room with y'all, but you guys are stars of this, and it's been a pleasure for me to sit down with you. Thank you.